Okay, hello everyone. My name is Craig Mathis. I am the bookstore and distribution manager here at Printed Matter in New York City. We're happy to play host to the North American book launch and panel discussion for news animations from the artist Simone Forti. We are going to watch several clips, hear from several panelists, have a reading, and then that's going to be followed by Q&A. In the chat for today's panel discussion, I'll include links both to the event page on our site with participant bios, a link to learn more about and purchase the book, as well as a link to Printed Matter's YouTube page where today's presentation will be archived for later viewing. I'd like to introduce now Luca Pinto, who is the artistic director of the Museum of Contemporary Art of Rome, and he will take it from here and introduce today's participants. Thank you.
Thanks, Craig. I'm really happy to celebrate the release of this book titled News Animations, and is a book published by NERO Editions and the Centro Pecci Museum from Prato. And so this book has been published in occasion of Simone Forti exhibition titled Senza Fretta that I curated last summer at the Centro Pecci. So Prato is, for those who are not familiar with the city, is in Tuscany and is a very important city for Simone's family, since her father Mario was from Prato, came from there. And Simone was born in Florence, which is quite close to Prato. And so the exhibition actually look at Simone's work through the lens of news animation. So the focus was on this work, which is not a series of work, is more like a sort of attitude where Simone works with the relationship between language, thought, and physicality. And I think it's also very personal work, and is a work that reveals also some main interest of Simone, which is about mainly the exploration of the potential of language in a full and total dimension, combining movement, words, images, and sound. And when I say it's also very intimate works, because it's a work that Simone started to develop in 1985, shortly after when the death of Mario, of the father. And unlike Simone, the father was an avid reader of newspapers, and this work is Simone construct an improvisation based in response to the news, and she's doing so by combining, as I said, movement and speech. And so in the exhibition, as I said, we presented both performances, some drawings of news animations produced between the 80s and the 2000, early 2000, and as well some videos, both videos documenting news animations, but also videos where Simone performed for the camera. And we didn't want to produce a catalog, and we thought that was much more urgent to produce a publication focus on this body of work. And so the book contains transcriptions of 12 news animations plus drawings, a selection of drawings, and some field stills. And so to present the book tonight, I'm really happy to have, besides Simone, which is always a great privilege to have, also Cristiana Perrella, who is the former director of the Museum Pecci in Prato, of Centro Pecci. Sarah Swanson, who has been a long-time collaborator of Simone and played a major role in the exhibition, in Prato, and Anna Janewski. Anna, she's the curator in the Department of Media Performance at MoMA. Anna also worked a lot with Simone. She was also quite instrumental in the acquisition of dance constructions at MoMA. So I'm very excited to have all of you here. So before presenting some clips of news animations, as Craig mentioned, I will give the floor to Cristiana, who will say some few words about this exhibition. And I have to say that when I approached Cristiana proposing this exhibition, or suggesting how great would have been to have an exhibition of Simone in Prato, she was really excited since day one, and she was very committed to it. So I'm happy to have also Cristiana joining tonight.
Thank you, Luca. I'm very happy to be here tonight with Simone, with Sara, Luca, Anna, presenting the book News Animations, which came after the solo show by Simone held at the Center for Contemporary Art Luigi Pecci in Prato, which, as Luca said, I have been directing until last October. It was incredible, really, that we managed to have the exhibition and the book in the middle of the pandemic, despite everything. And with the full participation of Simone, I remember the many Zoom calls we had with her, performing for us through the screen and participating to every single moment of the making, both of the exhibition and the book, and to the opening and to the finissage of the exhibition as well. So her was really a major presence for all of us and for everybody who was involved in the exhibition during the whole making of it. And this was really a gift, considering also the hard times we were all living. The exhibition has a special value also for another reason, because this was the first major exhibition dedicated to Simone's work. And the fact that it was held in Prato, it's particularly significant because Prato is Simone's homeland. She was born in Florence, but she spent in Prato the early years of her childhood. And Prato is an industrial city north of Florence, where the Forti family, starting from the late 19th century, set up a textile factory managed with a great social responsibility. Simone has a strong bond with the city, with Prato, and she was forced to leave the city with her family in 1938 due to the racial laws promulgated by the fascist government in Italy against the Jewish people. And the choice to concentrate the exhibition on the news animation series is also strongly related to this biographical element. In fact, Simone's father, Mario, managed to predict the enormous risk for Jewish people in our country and to recover from it by reading the news in the international newspapers he received and read every day. So it was the news in the newspapers that saved the Forti family, and Simone, in 1985, decided to pay homage to her father, who has just passed away, by referring to the intuition that saved her and her family's life. Also for this reason, it has been a very special exhibition, the one in Prato. And this is a special book too. And I want to thank everybody who was involved in the making of it, and Simone and Luca in particular. It was the last project of my tenure at the museum, and I think it couldn't end in a better way than this. So thank you again, and really thanks Simone.
Thank you.
Thanks, Cristiano. So I think we can, yeah, we can show some of these clips from the news animations video. So I think.
See this picture, Manny? What is that? It looks like a mountain with some trees. Oh, you know what, Simone? You know, you were thinking about doing your newspapers into wind dance.
They'll call it something else, like when Genghis Khan came in and brought in a standard coin, and on the basis of that. But all the wealth in the known world, pearls, 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 and gold in exchange for these, in exchange for the standard, in exchange for the standard, the power of 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 the standard, power of the standard, power of the standard, power of the standard, the power of the standard, the power of the standard, the power of the standard. And as long as there's one standard that's holding everything standard, that's the Pax standard. And the minute the standard, for whatever reasons of Tao, whatever new evolvings and flowerings and finishings happen, that's when all wings set up. And that's it. I've had chances to go to Israel and I won't go. And it's just, but then I think, and I won't go because I don't like that split, but then I think I have that split right here in America. I have the sweet life, I have my sweet apartment, my sweet friends, we dance, we eat fruit salads, and at the same time, we're not so close to the people that we are that we are oppressing, but we're doing it.
Right. And also, I think it's not so burning and it's not so strong that the whole world is invested in it and looking at it every moment, which is the case in Israel. You know, everybody has some kind of investment in that place.
Simone wanted to read one of the news animations we transcribe in the book. So, Simone, I will pass the floor to you.
Okay. Hello, everybody. Ciao. I'm going to read one from 2004. It was at the Getty Museum in Los Angeles. It's so nice to be here. It's so all right. It's all right. It's all right. We're all right. We're all right. We're all right. This is house paint from the Orchard hardware store, stenciled with a piece of cardboard. And I see the palm trees and they finger, and they finger. They bend, so beautiful. You are so beautiful. You are so beautiful. The palm trees I saw in that harbor. and now the Euphrates, and the other one, and Gilgamesh. It's the old part. It's the old part. It's this part. It's this part, and this part, and this part, in flames, and flames, and flames, the scriptures, the old, the scriptures, the scriptures. And Gilgamesh had to go. He had to go. He had to go. There's something so bland and yet so da-da-da-da-dum, da-da-dum. But everything, da-da, and everything. It's so nice to be here in this building. It's so nice. And you can have lunch in the cafe. You can have lunch, and then later you can go to bed and you think about, you're anxious. I get anxious. Maybe I get a little heavier blanket tonight. It's just a little cooler, and it's so nice. It feels normal. It feels normal that it's nice. Mountains. I love to garden. And if you put the herbs, oregano, you can plant a little oregano right here. Pretty soon the mint, that invades the mint, and the chamomile does it. But the oregano does it the most. The oregano just goes like this. It's like it sets up the pox oregano, because everything else is gone. And the stars. And somewhere, what is normal? What is normal is you have a piece of bread. You have a piece of bread, and you go through and the Gilgamesh guys are there, the Gilgamesh guys, and you've got this bread, and that's normal. It's normal. You're hiding. You walk by somebody in the street, and this is coming out of their nose. It's coming out of their nose. And it's so nice to be here. It's so nice. And it's so beautiful. Look how beautiful. Well, my voice seems to be holding up, so maybe I'll read another one. And I want to say something about the other one that I'll read. I like to think of news animations can be like the fool of the king, who can say anything, and it's okay. He can say things that someone else would get punished for. But because it's the fool, and he says it while he's turning a somersault, it's all right. So I never expected this to be printed. Like a jigsaw, Florida, Central America, Brazil. When the news comes on is when I get a glass of wine, not before. And so I love the news. And I feel so safe when I'm listening to the news and drinking my wine and hearing about faraway troubles. And it's such intricate puzzles. And then it's mostly, we hear what's happening on our planet. Once in a while you hear about some big chunks of something out in space or some new black hole. But mainly, and my feelings have changed somehow. Maybe you've been thinking about I've been thinking about my father, Mario, and my uncle Natale, and my father who got us out of Europe, and Natale, who stayed and went into the underground, into the resistance in France. And he got a lot of people out because he didn't have a family. I've been thinking about what it means to be a householder as opposed a little more, as opposed to being a warrior. And suddenly the Jews or the Japanese or the Arabs can't publish anymore. That's as far as my voice will go.
Thank you, Simone. Was beautiful. I'm curious to know what was your impression when you received the books, because to me is a sort of an epiphany, and is quite, I mean, the power of this work is that, you know, even detached from the performance and from the movement, and you read these as text. I mean, as they're kind of beautiful poems, and I think is almost magic, you know. So I don't know what's your feeling to see them collected in a book, because I mean, for most of the people, including me, of course I've seen the videos, but I can read it as them as text alone, detached, as I said, from the performance, and it's great. And yeah, I don't know. I was curious about you. What was your feeling since you made it, and since of course you perform it, and so without having that living aspect, what was your feeling about reading them as texts?
Well, I love this book. For one thing, I love the cover. I love the object. I love that it's not very precious. It really interests me how bits of language are left out, because they're taken care of with the movement. Now the movement is gone and the language is broken up a little bit, like the cutouts, like William, what's his name?
William Burroughs.
William Burroughs. It gives an openness that I might forget to give if I was just writing. Yeah, I'm very happy with it.
Great, we're all very happy. And so Sarah, I think is for me, it's yeah, I mean, it's quite interesting to hear your experience about this work, also because you perform it in Prato, and of course, you know, Simone and Simone's work by heart. And so first of all, I'm really, really happy that also you can be here. And as I said before, without you, also the exhibition couldn't be what it was. So thanks.
Oh, you're welcome. It was my pleasure. It's my total pleasure. Yeah, well, like many of the mediums or the media that Simone ventures into and continues to venture into, like you said in your introduction in the book, she just blows it into another thing. I mean, it's so deeply investigated, it becomes its own new thing. And I feel the news animations are that. There are many people speaking and moving, but there's something about the combination of her particular movement style and her energy and the way it fuses with language that is unique. And like the dance constructions are unique. There's nothing like them. And like you said in your introduction, like everything you touch, Simone, becomes a unique iteration of something. And I was really happy that that you read from the Getty, which is my all-time favorite news animation. And that's one that I transcribed. Actually, I transcribed that one like 3 years ago, or 3 or 4 years ago now. I was doing a lecture in Seoul, Korea on you, and I wanted them to see a news animation, so I transcribed the whole thing, and I had that translated into Korean, and I put the subtitles on. So I know that one the best, and it's really a gem. So I'm glad you read from that. I transcribed maybe 4 or 5 of the news animations in this book, and it gave me so much satisfaction and pleasure to do, because it was a kind of challenge of, well, how can I format these and use ellipses and commas and dots and spaces and dashes and everything to try and convey the energy and the flow of how you phrase things. And, you know, as you say, things are left out that are filled by movement. But I reread the whole book today, and it's such a great read. I mean, not only is it like a deep dive into your mind, but it's so easy to read. And you know, if you read the whole thing all at once, like I did, you know, there's certain things that keep coming back. Like, I think the Middle East is mentioned in just about every single news animation in here in some fashion. And other things that you have recurring concerns that keep coming back, and it's really interesting to see that. So I'm really happy for my involvement in the book. I'm delighted to have done that part of it, and it was well, I don't want to say much more. I did a couple of news animations in Prato, and I was extremely nervous. So I'm not sure they were as spontaneous as I would have liked them to be, but you know, I had to speak Italian, and it was really hard. So anyway, but I'm really glad I did it, and it was great to get back into it again. So yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Sarah. So Anna, as I said, she should follow over the years the work of Simone, and during the pandemic, she also recorded and published a conversation with Simone about the very recent work she did, these back drawings made during the pandemic. One of the few very poetic works produced by artists, I would say, this last year. And it came quite spontaneously for me to involve Anna in this book launch. And it's also interesting from the perspective of a collecting institution, how like this the news animation is really almost impossible, you know, to think about them in terms of how to collect. And already like dance constructions, I think, was a big achievement for the museum to do it, and that's the power of Simone's work, because it poses questions also to an institution that maybe before would never imagine. And this is really, for me, the uniqueness also of the work of her practice, and also how open Simone is about rereading her work and changing titles, or, you know, this is a true improvisation. So Anna, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you, Luca, for inviting me. It's really great to be here in this company, and it's also great to reunite with Simone and Sarah. It's true that in the last few years or even more, we've been very often in touch for various reasons, for like working with Simone of performances, but it's true that the dance constructions are somehow a bond for life, I would say. It's like an ongoing reflection, actually, what does it mean to have the dance constructions in the museum, in the collection, because the dance constructions are actually in the MoMA collection since 2014, and it's kind of an intellectual gift that Simone gave us. So there is no really a solution how to do it. But while I was reading the book, actually, as Sarah said, it's really incredible to be immersed in Simone words, in the images, in the drawings, and to have those mental images that somehow accompanied each of the script. So I also organized my short presentation a little bit with thoughts and mental images that were triggered by the book. And of course, somehow the entry point of the news animations are the newspapers. And I learned a few days ago that Kosovo is the first country in the world that got rid of newspapers, of any kind of print press. So basically, it's not possible to buy newspaper. There are no print newspaper produced in Kosovo. And I thought, of course, particularly with older people who are used, I think, who have rituals of reading newspapers, and whom also newspapers are the source of information, and knowing also the region, which is there are always some ethnic tensions going on. It's like that's where you get your news mainly. And Kosovo is just across the Adriatic Sea from Italy, from Prato. And then I thought about my grandmother, Croatian grandmother, who survived 3 wars. And she used always to say, you have to know how to read newspapers. You have to read between the lines. She always said that. And of course, that led to Mario, Simone's father, that has already been mentioned, that is the inspiration in a way of the news animations, because reading the newspaper, he predicted the future, the Second World War, and saved the family. But then it was also interesting, and as Christina mentioned, also the line of how Simone was inspired for the news animation not only by the family story, but also in a workshop in 1985 by the activist and academic Berenice Fischer, as she said, writing about the news animation, who wanted to develop a more personal way for people to read newspapers. I imagine that was her way to think how to read between the lines. And so she suggested in this workshop that people would like bodily react to newspapers or to headlines. And I love that Simone, as she says in her text, she doesn't remember the headline, but she remembers the movements. And that somehow, per association, led me to Judson Dance Theater, to the Judson Church, to the Protestant church in the Washington Square here in New York, that hosted a group of artists known under Judson Dance Theater, who were like really experimental and revolutionized modern contemporary dance and even art. And the first concert of dance happened in July 6th, 1962. And there's this work of Elaine Summers, of the choreographer Elaine Summers, with the title Daily Wake of Newspaper Dance, which basically she distributed newspapers on the floor, and the newspapers were somehow scores and cues for the performers. And it was organized in a way that there was like a group and individual, but in the way that there was never somehow emphasis on the individual, but mainly on the group. So there was no hierarchy distinguished from background and foreground. So it was a cooperative situation, which is also was like a Judson ethos. And it's always talking about Judson. Simone was not part of Judson, but she was a precursor of Judson, contemporary of Judson, a thread of the Judson Dance Theater, an inspiration of the Judson Dance Theater, and in particular the dance constructions that we mentioned, which are a set of objects and movements that she developed in 1960 and 1961, which are based on improvisation. And the news animation are also based on improvisation. We have also both side objects and improvisation, very different, but there's this idea of the improvisation within the structure. And some time ago, I wrote about improvisation in Simone, saying, using improvisation, Simone creates a complex mental and physical space that can be occupied by several people. This space collapses if someone tries to impose themselves too much, but it allows performers to assert themselves. It is a place for criticism, polemic, and confrontation, but not for ego. And one of the dance constructions, huddle, requires 7 to 10 people to stand very close, facing each other one by one. And the participants detach from the group to climb up outside the little mountain, the little huddle. And the piece relies on intuition, negotiation, trust, care, balance, physical closeness, and so forth. And it's a metaphor of relations. It's a metaphor also for civic space. And when I look at the news with the book, and I look at the drawings of the news animations, which are very beautiful, there was one in particular that I loved, which is on page 86, called Stand in Comfort. And it's a crawling figure. It's very simple. It's a crawling figure. And Simone says, I love the feeling of crawling on hands and knees, the weight of my upper body on my hands, the closeness to the ground. And there's a lot of crawling and rolling in her performances. And there's a lot of crawling also in news animations. And also there is this mythical almost moment. Those moments became mythical when people saw her crawling for the first time, like Steve Paxton also in the Merce Cunningham classes in New York in the end of 50s, beginning of 60s. And crawling and rolling, we could see it also in the Zuma Beach that we saw the clip, but also in a free consultation when she's like rolling with the radio, which is another way of get the news. And thinking about the drawings and the news and the radio, and also thinking how this, in a way, it's this contemporary way it's a way of Simone to react to what is contemporary, what's around the world. As you said, Sarah, like the Middle East has been mentioned so many times because it's an ongoing world problem. And this like bodily way, it's a somatic way of react, but also through feelings. And so during COVID, yes, as you, Luca, mentioned, like I think every artist was asked, what are you doing? How are you reacting? Everybody was trying to put something online. And I reached out to Simone and we had a chat, and she mentioned those bag drawings, the fact that she was like using grocery bags to draw. And they're also crawling figures on these opened grocery bags that really convey this idea of agitation and solitude, and also confinement, and also potential motion. And I've wrote about it. I imagine Simone on the floor, on her hands and knees, enacting movements similar to those she was drawing. What about this? I imagine her wondering. Oh, I'll use those. The bags speak to her mundane habits and end a playful diaristic note. A feeling of possible coming scarcity, she said, as demonstrating by the hoarding of toilet paper. And it's true that those works were also shown in the Prato show, where I think it's really great. Thinking with the Body is the title of her retrospective show in Salzburg, and one of her first catalog, like really comprehensive catalogs. The news animation, it is like thinking about the news through the body. And you mentioned, Simone, the King Falls. I love how you're explaining that, the fact that you are like, how you understand the world through the movement, and you give some examples that I will read because I think they're really beautiful. You say, and anyway, so much of the language of the news media is related in terms of physical dynamics. The dollar in free fall, Lebanon as a slippery slope, Iran sending human waves against the invading Iraqi army, and so on. And that's what I dance, and sometimes think of myself as the king's fall. And I had this honor to work with you on the news animation at MoMA in 2013, and The King Falls was the title of the news animation that we presented at MoMA. And also, it was interesting because, you know, that was a big moment when everybody was talking about dance in the museums, and you were performing between two adjacent galleries. In one, there was Richard Serra. On the other one, there was Jasper Jones and Robert Whitman and Robert Morris. You know, all those friends, collaborators, partners. And so partner and collaboration and partnership are so important for you, and even we can see that in the news animation. Sarah Luca mentioned how Sarah was really fundamental for the show in Prato, and Sarah is fundamental also for the dance constructions, but also all those other people with whom you performed the news animation. We saw Batya, and I remember seeing for the first time the news animation here in New York at the Dance Space. It was organized by Judy Hussey Taylor. And I love the title also, That Fish is Broke. And you performed with Brennan Gerard. And then he performed the news animation 6 months after the MoMA, your MoMA performance, in the same space at MoMA as part of Boris Sharmat's Musée de la Danse. And we were there like looking at him, and it was really, really beautiful to see him 6 months after, and the way he's embodying the news. And I refer to him as your student, and I remember you look at me with your witty tone, and you said, "You mean my colleague?" And I could go really on and on with this form of association, because it's so beautiful and so inspiring and so incredible. But I had 10 minutes, so I will finish just with another quote, and that's the beginning of the King's Fall of the news animation that you performed at MoMA in 2014. There are thoughts, there are structures of thoughts. There are thoughts in the structure of thoughts, but it would be brutal to put them together. Thank you.
Thank you, Anna. And I don't know, Craig, if we should open to questions or.
Yes, certainly. I mean, if there are participants in the audience that would like to leave questions in the chat, we can certainly ask them. Otherwise, one question that I have, given the nature of the news in a contemporary sense, like, how would you interpret movement in relation to sort of the environment that we're in? The question is for everybody, and digesting the work over the years, like how could it apply to the time today?
Well, when you asked that question, I right away had an image and a feeling in my body. And I went like, oh, well, I can't do it because my hand is curled from Parkinson's, but it was like this. I curled into myself and held my hands out.
It's I would say, I mean, it's a very interesting time in how people have been sort of compelled to pick sides and interpret truth and things like that. The movements from the videos that we watched earlier resonate deeply in the way that they accompany the words, and then in relation to reading them along in the book, which I was doing during the talk. It's extraordinary. For the panelists, when you first had your, sort of hands on the book, how did that change your experience from your past recollections of seeing performances?
Well, let's see, take the book in my hand.
But
I like the drawing that's on the cover. How did it change? It just developed another aspect. It got richer. It made another possibility to hold it in your hands and to receive it. more cut up. I like the cut up aspect of it.
And Anna, were you going to say something?
No, yeah, I wanted to say that, yeah, I never read I mean, I read a lot of Simone's writings, but it was what Simone said, it gave another aspect, and it gave this like beautiful mental images, because of, even without seeing any of the news animation, I think you can start imagine things, but then seeing it at least too, then you can somehow go into this universe of those that you haven't seen. So I felt, and together also with the drawings and with some photos, it created this like complete perception, I would say. And also it shows what has been many times, that, you know, Simone is not just a dancer. There's so much of what else she's doing, like the language is so important to her. So I really, I was even surprised how engaging it really was, and funny, and you can laugh and you can imagine and you can, you know, relate to the past, thinking about that in relation to what is going now. So, and then also read Simone's thoughts of the news animation, which is the very end of the book, but it then also help you to somehow go back and maybe read them again and imagine even more.
Yeah, also in the structure of the book, we didn't want to have them edited in a chronological order, but rather doing based on association. So also this, you know, at the end is a sort of stream of consciousness, and also that's the way the book was edited. And but yeah, in a way, news animation is really a sort of Gesamtkunstwerk, because it's really a total and also this idea of being a true metamorphical work, because it's constantly in the translation from the body to the words and to the images and to the video. Is constantly, there is this flux, and is a sort of vortex, and but made in a very kind of poetic way, as really Simone knows how to do it. And I would say it's also a political work, even if Simone, of course, is never likes to consider this work in explicit way political, but I think it's political, but made in such a poetic way, and I think there are very few artists able to do so. And so yeah, thanks, Simone. Thanks, Simone, for being you.
Okay. It's easy.
And there is often singing also in the news animation, so it's really covering, I think, all of the Simone interest in a way.
Also in the exhibition, we have this kind of sound collage, also of having Simone singing in Italian. So yeah. Yeah, so I don't know, I don't see questions besides
Fun club.
Club.
Many positive affirmations and feelings from the people in the audience, which is nice. I had one more question myself personally, just from watching the earlier videos regarding the environments that the pieces were performed in. How do they contribute to or speak to the presentation itself, and how do they coalesce into the words and the movement, like between the ocean front and, you know, another room? Like, yeah, I was just curious about that.
How does the environment play into the improvisation, into the performance? Well, I say we because Jason shot them, and that was an important aspect of the piece. So the 3 pieces, which are collaborations with Jason, where I don't use words and where I have some device for getting news and some symbol of where the news resides. And we chose over time 3 locations. Zuma Beach was the first one. There we shot the improvisation with the newspapers in the sand at the surf. The second one was in the tributary to the Mississippi River, right at where the smaller river goes into the big Mississippi. And in the first one that I mentioned, we have the newspapers at the beach. At the water's edge, at the river, we have 2 half flags that I made from canvas. One flag has red stripes and the other flag has blue stars on canvas. The third one was at Lake Michigan in the winter, and there's snow on the ground. And there I have a little radio, a little wind-up radio, actually. And so it's a triptych with the theme of means of connections with what's going on in the world in different locations. And how did I get onto that?
Environments.
Oh, the environment, yes. Then often the environment is a studio or a gallery or a museum gallery. And I also very often work with some kind of prop that's not the newspapers. It was a decision that someone made with this news animation book to have, I believe, all the news animation performance pictures with newspapers. But in the morning before I'm going to do an improvisation, I do 2 things. I write for 20 minutes and in a way that I call focused stream of consciousness. And I look for arbitrary object. It could be some ropes that I have in the garage, or it could be a box of crackers, just something that I put in the space, which when I run into it, I'm surprised, and it makes a connection with what I'm talking about, but a connection that I would not have thought of if I hadn't run into that arbitrary object. And its function is to throw in some confusion, to surprise me.
Thank you.
Okay, so I don't see questions, so I don't know if anyone has something else to say. Otherwise, I would say that we can close it here.
Someone has a question.
Yeah.
Anonymous attendee says, is the movement and flow of water significant to the news animations?
I guess so. It seems to be, I mean, the ocean, the river, and the frozen, no, the lake wasn't frozen, but there were hunks of ice at the edge. Sarah, you haven't taken any of the questions.
I have a question, and maybe we can. I'm interested about, because now I'm more like familiar of how the transmission happens with the dance constructions, but how does the transmission happen with the news animation? Like, what are the set of instructions, let's say, that Simone or like Sarah, you had to perform the news animation? Because are you following the script, or are you like,
it's a great question. Yeah, I can answer that because I just wrote a whole ton about this for the Pompeii commitment thing, and the answer is I was never taught this is how you do a news animation. I feel like I absorbed that through the hundreds of improvisations we did in rehearsal. We did so many rehearsals, I mean, countless rehearsals. And I feel like this focused stream of consciousness thing is something I absorbed over practice, but there's no instruction because every news animation is different. You know, it's not going to be repeated. I mean, some elements come back, I guess, sometimes, but it's not a piece to be created and then restaged. It's actually, it's a practice, right?
And what about then the script that's in the book?
These scripts were spontaneous improvisation.
That you transcribed.
I transcribed them. That has nothing to do with my own news animations.
But
is that what you mean?
Yeah. But I mean, are there gonna be somehow a hint for future news animations, or that's it? That's what happened, and that's it.
My answer is, this is what happened before, and each time someone does a new one, it's a new thing.
New script, yeah, or new.
Yeah, it's a new creation every time, right, Simone?
Yes, I would also say that there's a lot of language being used in dance nowadays, and in many art forms. A lot of language is coming in a poetic way too, I would say. And I think that I've been part of this movement, let's say. I got a lot from the books of Natalie Goldberg, who's a writer and teaches writing workshops. So that this stream of consciousness that somehow ties to something that gives a point of reference very much comes from her. And a lot of dancers have read her workshop books. And also, I think a lot of people are using language in their work, like, for instance, Jeremiah Day, who does something else from how I do it or how you did it, Sarah, at the closing of the Pecci show. And I feel that I was early in helping to develop a movement a possibility of speaking and moving. I came to that work at a time when there was already a lot of improvisation that Anna Halpern had a lot to do with. That somehow through her students and people who worked with her and working with the workshop process, which was pretty new at that time, when dance classes were a matter of learning particular movements. So it was a mood that was happening. It was a possibility that was being discovered by many people. And so it's exciting to me to see Sarah do moving and speaking work. And a lot of people who studied with me are doing that, and in ways that are very different from what I do. But I feel that I had some influence. I know that I had some knowledge and some familiarity and with that possibility. That's yeah.
Sorry. The last thing you said to me recently about transmission right before I left LA to come here, you said, I'm much less interested in transmission than I am in influence.
Yes.
That's a whole another panel.
Yes.
So we have a reason to continue.
Yeah.
Good idea.
Part
Yeah.
2.
Well, that's the limit of Zoom. We could all have a glass of wine now, but
Yeah.
Are there more questions? No. Okay. Yeah, so thank you, everyone. I forgot to thank also Davide Francalanci from NERO that helped to make this presentation possible to happen. And yeah, it was great. And I hope we can continue.
Yeah.
definitely.
Yes, yeah. I'd also, on behalf of Printed Matter, I would like to thank Simone, of course, NERO, the publishers, and Luca, and everybody else on the panel. We are deeply honored to be able to play even the virtual platform for a great presentation. So thank you all. We'll save this and upload it so people can watch, whenever they can. And if anyone has questions, they can always reach us here at the store about the book. So unless anyone has any parting words or.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Luca.
Yeah, thank you, everyone. And hope to see you
Great
soon.
to see you.
And hope to see you soon too.
Likewise. Thank you too.
Ciao, Simone.
And to Christina and to whoever at, I guess, Craig at Printed Matter. Up to the idea to host this launch. I really appreciate it. And that's wonderful that you did that.
Thank you, Simone.
Bye.
Goodbye,
Bye.
everybody.
Hugs,
Ciao.
everyone. Ciao. Ciao. Buonanotte.
Buonanotte.
Buonanotte.